morning and welcome to IAG Performance. IAG is one of our favorite distributors. We love their parts, we have them on all of our cars, and we want to come down here and show you guys around a little bit. I came down and then we got Chris here. Chris is ready to roll. Yeah, Chris wanted to come down really bad. He's always wanted to come here and check it out, and he's installed many an IAG product, many an engine.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris. It's nice to meet you.
What do you do?
Work on Subarus, as well as other cars.
We're excited. The last time I was at IAG was not this IAG, it was the previous location. They had like the half a car cut on the wall, and that was to pick up my car from getting built, and that was like probably 8 years ago. Check out the new facility, show you guys around.
Manager's offices, customer service team, sales, purchasing, customer service, just daily operational stuff up here, right?
Off-road stuff's like really
it's really picking up at this point. Awesome. It's really good because, as I'm sure you guys have seen in the performance market, there's some uncertainty right now with EPA regulations and the STI doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
So you take basically 50% of what we sell to and it goes away. You sort of have to
take its place.
Exactly,
yeah.
Something has to take its place. And that's where the Bronco and the F-150 Raptor stuff really come into play.
Yeah.
You'll see as we walk through, we started the same way on the Bronco side of things as we did on the Subaru side of things way back, going 12, 13, 14 years ago. So it's very similar business model to a certain degree. So we don't work on customer cars anymore.
Yeah,
right?
a couple years ago.
We stopped that about 3 years ago at this point, almost 3 years ago at this point.
It's too much to juggle.
Too much to juggle. Really, we needed this space for testing and development, particularly on the Bronco platform.
Yeah.
The reality is, it was a fair bit of the headache and a very small margin of what actual business was bringing in.
Yeah.
Because we're a multinational corporation at this point. We're shipping to South America and Australia and China and Germany. Oddly enough, like Kenya is a really big place for Subarus, high horsepower Subarus.
Sweet.
I mean, we're selling billet block builds to guys in Kenya like on a monthly basis. It's really kind of crazy to see how far we've come in such a really grand scheme of things, short amount of time.
Yeah.
So some of these are personal projects for JJ, the owner. So he's got a few things here. We're working on getting those completed and out of here so we can get some of this space back. Those were supposed to be real small projects that turned into big projects, as anything does.
True.
No different than the service side and why we got rid of it, because you come in for a brake job and next thing you know, I've got your car for 6 months doing this, that, the other, waiting on parts, whatever it might be, right?
That was me.
We're not going anywhere in the Subaru market, and we're trying to continue to develop and release new products, but the EJ motor's been around since, the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Really nothing's really changed on it all that much. So we're looking for ways to do things that nobody else has done before, but that market is slim, right?
Yeah.
For 20 years, people have been making Subaru parts, right?
Yeah, it seems like you guys have been I would almost say more focused on motorsports than previously. It's almost like, I don't know, a lot more of the drag stuff especially.
Yeah, and drag's big for us, right? So, this car doesn't currently hold the record. It did for a short period, but then it got overtaken by Cosmic. But Cosmic's running one of our engines, so I really can't be that mad over it. We're hoping to get into the 7s. Unfortunately, didn't make World Cup this year. We had a couple things. We went out to make a couple test hits 2 weeks prior and broke a couple things, and we were like, we're not going to be able to make it happen this year. So, but this is, where we do a lot of testing and development for the high horsepower stuff. Sometimes this car has an off-the-shelf Stage 4 Extreme, or what's now called an 1150 in it. Sometimes it's got stuff that is proprietary that we're working on to potentially release out into the market at some point in time. Right now it's got one of our billet blocks in it with some fancy trick internals that I'm not going to talk too much about because they're still in the works. So makes about 1,200 horsepower or so. 2 years of carbon fiber in the making, right?
And he's Maryland or North Carolina or something like that?
He's North Carolina, if I remember. Or I'm sorry, he was DC, and he just recently moved, if I remember correctly.
Gotcha.
I don't remember where he moved to, but that splitter, based on the computer models, should make about 2,000 pounds of downforce. It's insane.
Just like the whole car.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to need to give this car a lot more power to turn even the same lap time because of how much downforce it's going to make at this point. So that's going to be interesting, and how we deal with that moving into hopefully next season. This car will run again. We've had this on our VA car for 2 seasons at this point, and we have yet to break one. And that's at 1,200 horsepower, you know, bouncing on launches, being pretty aggressive with it. Really, the biggest holdup on that was getting axles done for them. We finally got axles for them. We're hoping we can have these out, you know, probably Q1-ish of next year is sort of our goal.
I have a R200 rear diff.
Okay.
It's a 2JZ swap, so I had to get like, custom axles, which took a while.
And, you know, custom axles take a while regardless, right? You know, DSS typically will tell somebody 6 to 8 weeks, and then it's generally 6 to 8 months. And that's for a single set of axles, right? You know, when you're trying to get 40, 50, 60 pairs of axles, it takes forever, and there's so few people out there that can do it that you're at the mercy of them is really it, you know, so. So we've got a 2-door hardtop base. We have a 4-door soft top. That is a Big Bend. And then we have a Bronco Raptor as well, which is currently outside. But we use these things. I mean, we take them off-road and we beat the hell out of them, because that's the only way that we can know what breaks and what needs to be updated, right? On the Bronco side of things, like I was saying, on the Subaru market, right, the very first product we ever sold for Subaru was this little bracket that bolted to the driver's side seat rail, hooked into your floor mat to keep the floor mat from sliding up underneath the pedals, because they didn't have anything in 02 when the WRX came to the American market. There was nothing there, right? So that was the very first product we ever made for the Subaru side of things. Inexpensive, easy to install, really affects how you interact with the vehicle on a daily basis. Same basic idea on the Bronco side of things, right? So if we look at this, so if you look
strut there,
the strut there on the back side of it, right? All that's doing is when you open up the trunk, it pops that lower bar up so you can get into it easier. From factory, they've got like a prop rod, like a hood prop rod, right? Which is the stupidest thing Ford could ever done, but I'm so glad they did it, because it's allowed us to sell thousands and thousands of those kits. And again, inexpensive. Anybody with a basic set of hand tools can install it in 10 or 15 minutes. And again, improve something that you interact with on almost a daily basis. Then that gets your name out in the market. People know who you are, and then you can start. Then you can start doing things that are a little bit more complicated, like side steps. You know, we're working on an AOS system for these things. You know, in the beginning, when they first came out, the 2.7 liter had some valve issues. They were dropping valves out of them, and you know, so we're of course looking at that very closely, going, okay, is this something where we could potentially offer a better solution? Because as you see, as we walk over here, we have ways of developing all of that stuff in-house. It ended up not being as big of an issue. It only affected a very small run. But, you know, those are things we're looking at going, okay, we can't just start selling valve trains for Broncos and nobody knows who we are, right? So that's why it's so important to get that brand recognition early with things that people are willing to go, I don't know who this company is, but it's $100. I'll roll the dice on it, right? But what is interesting is I see a lot of crossover from Subaru customers that have grown up a little bit, got big boy jobs now, they've got real money, and they're going out and buying Broncos. I mean, almost every day I talk to somebody that goes, hey, I've got your stuff on my Subaru, or had your stuff on my Subaru, and now I need stuff for my Bronco, right?
That's awesome.
It's actually really, really cool having that crossover between the two platforms.
That's great.
And I owned a Jeep, but my first car ever was a Jeep Wrangler 2-door, JK. I'm an off-road guy, I'm a dirt bike guy. This is familiar to me, but I've never really been a Ford guy. When we picked these up, dude, I fell in love with them. Like, I love driving these things. They're super fun to drive. Ford's done a really good job with the interiors of them. They're not nearly as noisy as the Jeeps are. They ride a lot better than the Jeeps are. Like, even this with a 37 and a 5-inch lift on it is a fantastic daily driver. I would drive this thing every day without question.
That's sick.
So we're doing this sort of backwards, right? So this is actually the last step. This raw material comes down there at the end, gets cut, bent, whatever, and then the final step is to come up here and get welded. A lot of what these guys are welding at this point is Bronco stuff, so whether it's steps, skid plates, what have you, but of course we still do lots of Subaru stuff as well, right? So they're working on baffles for the oil pans back there. We've also added in a robot welder as well, and that does most of our individual steps. That just allows us to speed up our operation because we sell a ridiculous amount of these steps, and if it was just 6 guys welding them, we would never be able to keep up with demand on them.
Yeah.
Right? 2 CNC mandrel tube benders, right? So you can do anything from 4-inch pipe all the way down to 1/2-inch pipe, depending on what you're doing. So that allows us to do things like exhaust systems, roll cages, intercooler piping, or tubing for our steps to get a Bronco side step made, right? The laser here is a 6,000 watt laser. That'll do 1/2-inch stainless like it's nothing. It will do both flat sheet and round stock, not at the same time. Looks like right now they're doing round stock, right? So there's a big trolley that comes in here. You load your piece of round tubing in it. That'll cut all of your rib nut holes. That'll cut your fillets on your end, and then it'll also make a very small mark. Right? So that'll make a very small mark that tells the operator where it should be loaded into the CNC mandrel tube bender, and then from there the tube bender takes care of the rest of it. It does all of it in one go.
Awesome.
This is an anodizing line.
Yeah, it's not like tanks of something.
Yeah, so this will hopefully be running within the next 6 months or so, if I had to guess. This has been ongoing over the past 2 years. When we bought the new building and really needed to get the powder coating line up and running, this sort of fell by the wayside, but now that the powder coating line's almost up and operational, we're moving back in, focusing back to getting this up and running. And then at that point, we'll really be self-sufficient on coatings.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to rely on anybody else to do powder coating for us. We don't have to rely on anybody else to do anodizing for us.
Is there anything that you currently powder coat that you want to start doing anodized, or is it mostly just the current, like you outsource anodizing that you want to just bring in-house?
Yeah, it's more so we're just outsourcing our anodizing that we want to bring in-house. So, any of our aluminum stuff is going to be anodized for the most part. Fuel rail, TGV housings, even AN, because we make our own AN fittings here for a lot of stuff.
Really?
AN fittings, timing belt tensioner bracket, literally all of your billet aluminum products that need to have some sort of coating on it, we're currently outsourcing. And to be able to bring that in-house and control the quality and be able to offer more colors and stuff like that, that'll be big for us. Having this line here, right, it needs to be up and operational and have a product on it as much as possible. Yeah. But that also allows us to, if we have the need for it, we can offer anodizing for other people on whatever products they're making. So it really opens up a world of possibilities there with something like that. Same with powder coating line, right? Powder coating line will do what our current powder coater does in a week, in a day. Yeah. Right? So that means we need to have products on there all the time because that machine needs to pay for itself.
If not yours, someone else,
So, exactly. Awesome. Yeah, getting into more of the Subaru specific stuff. We're not machining a ton of products for the Broncos and the F-150 Raptors just quite yet, but it will certainly get there. The first thing will be the AOSs. We're hoping to have those released in the next couple months. So one of the few things we don't do here is casting. So all of our AOSs are all cast can assembly. They come in just like what you see here, right? They will then get loaded up into one of these tombstones and then come out looking like this, right? So they've got their drain hole machined into them. They've got your coolant barbs machined into them, your coolant passage, all your O-ring grooves, your AN fittings for your side port breathers. That's sort of what it comes out looking like. And then it'll go in, get deburred, cleaned up, QC'd, and then assembled in the assembly area, which we'll see shortly. Oil pans, right? So this is after it comes out of the machine, but comes in looking just like the AOSs do, completely unfinished. They'll have the O-ring groove machined in them, the dipstick holes, all of your mounting holes for your inner baffle, your fins, your drain, anything else that you can.
The logo, of course.
The logo, of course, yep. Your NPT fitting for your oil temp sensor if you want to run one. Those are likely going to become TGVs. Yeah. They start like this, and that becomes your TGV.
You guys had to cut a hole in the wall to bring in one of the new 5-axis machines,
correct.
I think.
That was where that door is over there is where that hole goes.
I've never seen that video. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, so these are the TGVs are a multi-step process. Yeah. So we try to do things in one step wherever possible, but it's not always possible. Sometimes they have to be refixtured, moved into a different machine, whatever it is, based on what we're actually making. I am by no stretch of the imagination a machinist or an engineer. So
you sound really good though.
As far as like, oh yeah, this machine does this over my head. I was talking about AN fittings. A lot of those will start with a block of aluminum, something like this size. I think those are actually destined to become competition. These are competition breathers for the AOSs, tops for AOSs, right? 5-axis, does all of our head work for us. FA, EJ, doesn't matter. You know, just load the program, hit go, pull it out when it's done.
Do you guys do send-ins for anything, like engine-wise anymore, or is it you just want to start with new?
We start with new in 95% of instances.
Yeah.
The only time we'll ever use used product is when it's already our engine and it's coming back for like a race refresh, or you know, it's got 100,000 miles on it. Generally not even then, because Subaru cases are so soft that once they have a bearing failure or you know, something to that degree, the mains are so blown out that it's not even worth the cost in shipping to send it back here. If we can even get it straight again, it generally costs as much as a new case is from Subaru. So your classic Subaru open deck design looks somewhat similar to this, depending on what case it is, right? But generally, they're open deck like this, right? So what we do is we come in and we machine a positive stop around the outside of the cylinder bore as well as into the case. We machine our inserts, right? These are for FAs, but these are actually cast aluminum, not billet aluminum. A lot of people look at these and go, oh, it's a piece of billet. It's not, it's a piece of cast. And the reason why it's cast is because you want the thermal expansion and contraction rate between the case and the insert to be as close as humanly possible, if not identical.
Crack something.
Exactly, right? So then we'll put these into liquid nitrogen, which is what this little pot here is.
Just about that.
Yep. So that's going to be filled with liquid nitrogen, which we've got big jugs of it here, and then we've also got giant jugs of it over there where they refill these. Press those in. Once they're pressed in, they look like this here, right? Then they'll get loaded onto this machine. Right now that machine's cutting inserts, but they'll get loaded onto that machine and then get machined back down to flat, right? So the FA stuff we do like this, the EJ stuff we generally still do with this multi-piece design. The FAs, because of the way that they're designed, the entire insert is one piece versus multiple different pieces, because on the EJs, you've got these cylinder supports up here.
You guys thought about like casting your own blocks?
It's been a conversation.
Right now it just makes more sense to just stick with what you know.
For right now, you know, it's easy enough to source Subaru cases still where it doesn't really make sense to cast them ourselves. But Subaru stuff is getting hard to come by. You know, one of our biggest holdup on FA24 development is that we still can't buy cases for them. Right? So, you know, if that situation never improves, all right, now there may be an opportunity to start discussing casting it ourselves. At that point, sort of sky's the limit. We don't have to stick with aluminum. We could certainly go to iron if we wanted to. You know, it's just another thing to think about and look at. Fuel rails in progress. They start out like that, then they'll come to this, right? Then they'll get anodized. Right now getting sent out for anodizing. Hopefully soon we'll be able to do that ourselves. Then they come back, final QC, ready to get put into a package and put on the shelf. Being that on the Subaru platform, you know, like the valve cover breathers, they're barb breathers, right? There's no quick connect fitting that you can attach to that, really. So it's a little bit of a different monster, but we will continue to incorporate that stuff into the Subaru platform as much as possible to make the install easier and more reliable and easier to pass carb compliance, right? So, you know, when you try to go get carb compliance, they look at absolutely everything, down to the style of clamp that you use, right? People complain all the time about those eared hose clamps that we use on our Subaru AOSs. What they don't realize is we have to use those to meet carb compliance. Now, our AOS is not currently carb, but we're working on it, but we make it for Cobb. And so really that's where that came from. Is zip ties work just fine. There's no pressure behind any of those ports. But in order for Cobb to get their carb compliance, we had to go to a clamp fitting, and that was the only one that they would approve, right? We're not just trying to make people's lives difficult or sell the pliers that we sell for it. It's physically because we have to put it there. So I
always wonder that. I always wonder that.
I get why guys complain about it, because they are a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they are.
But the reality is it's what we have to do in order to continue to offer them in today's market. Next, we're going to go through the engine department. You're welcome to film, not a big deal.
You stoked?
So super stoked.
This is our warehousing area, right? Nothing real fancy about this, it's a warehouse. But you can imagine when we had a catalog of 150 Bronco parts, there was nowhere to put it, right? You know, so we built upstairs at the very end there. There's about 20,000 additional square foot of warehouse space that we built upstairs. that housed most of our Bronco products, but having to go from down here and shipping to up there, you know, we're shipping about 100 or so Bronco packages a day, off-road packages a day. Having to make that trip 100 times a day gets old real fast, and it's really inefficient to do that. Having that space up in Hanover has been critical for us to increase efficiency and make sure that we're taking care of our Bronco customers the same way that we've always taken care of our Subaru customers. This is the teardown room, right? So anything that's coming back for a warranty consideration or for a race refresh, you know, we're getting into the off season of racing, so this is when a lot of guys tend to do, you know, their refreshes this time of year. So you'll see a lot of shop names that you recognize from racing in here, doing the normal refresh stuff, hoping we can save some dollars on a rebuild quote.
I've never heard them before, but that's a great name.
We treat every teardown exactly the same, whether it is for a warranty consideration, a race refresh, or just an old engine that's getting refreshed. Every single one of them goes exactly the same way.
Sweet.
As we take it apart, we measure and record literally everything, right? So down to the breakaway torque on the head studs, breakaway torque on the case bolts, measurements in 3 different places of every cylinder, breakaway torque on rod bolts. I mean, literally anything that relates to how it was put together gets recorded as it comes apart. And not only for warranty consideration, but like, you know, for example, if we build a long block for TGA and they send it in at the end of the season and we go, hey, you know, valve lash, we look at the blueprint from when it was built compared to the valve lash when it gets taken apart, we can say, all right, you know, you guys might want to look at toning down your launch control strategy, or, you know, based on the ring wear, you guys might want to add a little bit more fuel to it. The rings are starting to droop a little bit. Whatever it might be, we can offer some advice on how to get a little bit more longevity out of them. So from there, you're going to move into what's known as the semi-dirty room, right? So this is where all of the head work gets done that's not CNC porting, right? So multi-angle valve job, guide, checking leak down on heads, whatever it might be is going to get done in here. It's also where all the head parts are going to get cleaned in the ultrasonic there. This is also where your long block assembly is going to happen. So after the short block is done, the head work is done, it'll get brought into here, and then one of these guys will, you know, get it fitted up into a complete long block assembly ready to go out to a customer. So this is where a case half, a set of bearings, a set of rods, a set of pistons, a set of rings are all going to come together and just basically be serialized so that we know, all right, this set of 4 rods belongs to this case, this set of 4 pistons belongs to this case, this crank goes with this engine, and basically we're doing all of the machining in here so that when it gets to the final room, it's ready to get assembled right there and then. Bore and hone in here, we'll do our line hone in here, you know, we'll recondition the rods. When we get rods in, they come in unfinished, and then we do final machining to our specifications. And one of the things that's a little bit different than with us is a lot of people think that because we build so many engines that it affects the quality in a negative way. The reality is it's actually sort of the opposite of that. And the reason being is because we can use our financial ability to bring a large quantity of all of these parts in and match them very, very closely to what our specifications are. You call most machine shops and say, hey, I want to get an engine built for my Subaru, right? They might have 2 cases sitting on the shelf. They might have a couple sets of rods. They might have a couple sets of pistons. They might have a couple sets of bearings, and they're limited in what they have, right? And, you know, for example, the piston manufacturer will send us, you know, big pallets of pistons where they say, all right, these 4 match to our tolerance, right? We don't really care. We'll measure each one of them and go, okay, these 4 pistons might match your tolerances, but if we take 2 from here and 1 from here and 1 from over here, we can match them even closer to our specifications and to an individual engine or to an individual case or an individual crank, because no 2 cases, no 2 cranks, no 2 sets of bearings are exactly the same. Every single one of them is different. You know, this is the gun that we use for torquing case halves prior to machining. That gun records the torque of each individual fastener for that specific engine. So if it comes back for a warranty consideration and we go, case bolt torque on that was a little weird, we can go back and go, okay, what was this case torqued to? And figure out, was it a human issue? Was it a machine issue? Has somebody been in there before that we weren't made aware of, right? We can tell all of that really easily because we record literally everything we do as the process goes along. It also has its own AC system, so that there's never any cross-contamination of debris, and we can also keep each room at a very specific 68 degrees Fahrenheit, whether it's 90 degrees outside or 40 degrees outside.
This is the break room right here. Here it is, dude.
And so this is your final assembly area, right? So this is going to be where, that set of pistons that I talked about, that set of bearings I talked about, that crank I talked about, they've already been dedicated to this case. Yeah. So once it comes in here, it's just a matter of assembly and then getting it bagged up, ready to go out onto the shelf. And we typically do
each cylinder's number and everything.
Weights, measurements, everything's all recorded. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so we can literally go and pull up, hey, what did piston number 3 for engine serial number 12,000 weigh? Right, we have that all recorded. So once it's been bagged up, it'll go onto one of these shelves here, and then ready to get into one of our mother boxes. And either, right now we're gearing up for Black Friday, so we'll have a lot of engines sitting on the shelf ready to go. Or out, if it's dedicated to a customer, it'll get taken down to shipping, ready to go to wherever in the world that it's going. We typically we average around 2,500 short blocks a year or so, right there in that ballpark is where we're sitting right now. So we do a fair bit of them. But as an example of some of the quick connect stuff that I was talking about on the AOS side, right? So we will be transitioning to quick connect fittings for your breather lines on the side of the AOS can. These are specific for Ford stuff here at the moment, but these will be moving to the Subaru side of things sooner rather than later, so you can get rid of just your hose clamp on your barb fitting there. This is a an actual SAE push lock connector that'll be going onto those.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the fun spot, whether it be lunch or after work or Christmas party or whatever. Guys will get together, come up here, shoot some zombies or race some cars or throw some skee ball, what have you. The guys can come up here, before work, after work, during lunch or whatever, get a quick workout in. It's a nice perk to have this up here. You don't have to have a gym membership. It sees a fair bit of use. The guys really enjoy having it here.
Yeah.
Chris, let's see what you got happening.
The arcade was built specifically for service customers, right? That's why it's here. Is when we moved into this building and we were still doing service, we had no intention of it going anywhere. If you were coming in to get whatever done, you could come up here, watch your car get worked on, while you're hanging out up here in the arcade. So this, from where that blue shelving unit is, from here to there, was all Bronco stuff at one point in time. We'll keep a couple of each product here. Yeah. That way, in case somebody wants to stop by, we can just grab it from here and pull it, not have to bring it down from Hanover. Even this space is filled now at this point. Yeah. So,
what's the best idea that IAG has had that hasn't worked?
Best idea we've had that hasn't worked. That's a tough one, and I gotta make it something I can talk about.
I know, right?
This isn't something that hasn't worked directly, but is, I think, the closest I'm going to get to answering your question. Sure. And we talked about it while we were back there, and that is the Ford rear end for the Subarus. That has been something that drag guys have needed for the eternity of Subaru. Like, basically, once guys started going over 800 wheel, there was really a need for something like that in the market. We started working on that nearly 3 years ago. I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of guys are still getting out of drag racing Subarus because they're realizing how expensive it is.
Really?
And we're finally to a point where we're ready to release it 3 years late, right? If we had had that product ready to go 2 years ago, it would have been killer. And it still probably will do well, but it may not do as well as it was going to back then because a lot of the big power guys are getting out of the game. But the flip side of that is I'm seeing some new people join it. I'm seeing a lot of new names that I'm not used to seeing that are running low 9s, mid 9s, right? And I'm hoping that the Subaru community will continue to push the boundaries and we can get basically a street car into, well, let me rephrase that. We can get an H pattern car into the 7s, right?
Right.
That's really where the goal is now, and Cosmic's really close. You know, Cosmic ran a 802 on an H pattern car. We were running 8.5s on our car. I'd like to see us make it into the 7s with an H pattern car. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, in a roundabout way, the rear end that we're developing for them didn't work that well because we couldn't source parts for them at the time when we were developing it. And we had a lot of people really hyped up for them and then went, oh, sorry guys, we can't make it happen.
What do you think the success rate for like engine health has been for the AOS? Do you feel like it's been like something that's saved? I guess in a simple context, do you feel like there's a better probability of engine longevity due to that? And if you could say that, like what kind of percentage, I guess?
100%. So the AOS system is something that I recommend any Subaru owner install, any turbocharged Subaru engine owner install the day they roll off the lot, right? Removing the blow-by from the intake tract that is inherent to a flat 4 turbocharged engine, huge on longevity for these engines. When you look at engines come apart that didn't have an AOS on them, you can pretty easily tell by the condition that the pistons and bearings are in.
Just detonation? Or
detonation. Knock is the killer of these engines, right? The ringlands are weak, yes. The bearings that they use from Subaru aren't great, yes. But all of that can be prevented with a really good success rate simply by removing the blow-by that is inherent to them. And we are seeing that more and more on the direct injection engines now at this point, because you're not having that fuel clean the backside of your intake valves. You're getting 60, 70, 80,000 miles into an FA20 DIT car. The backside of the intake valves looks like a 200,000 mile motor. You know, and it's pretty nasty. And not only does that just, you lose power, right? But you're constantly running a little leaner than you think you should be because your intake valves are leaking. Right? You couple that with detonation and running lean,
not good.
Not good. So yeah, absolutely something that everybody should have on a Subaru, turbocharged Subaru. No questions asked.
So IAG started as like a Volkswagen kind of, that's where JJ
sort of, but yes.
That's like they like way back. Do you have plans to get into like any other like VAG or like European or even like other import stuff more? Or is it?
So I'll never say never, right? Because JJ said we would never build engines. Right? JJ said we would never have a service department. And we built this company on a service department and an engine manufacturing process, right? So I'll never say never, but right now, not really. Just because we have so many different pokers in the fire with the Bronco and with the Subaru side of things that it just comes down to time and availability. When we get to a point where we have time and availability, very likely could. And you know, we currently sell other makes and models products on our website, particularly like if you look at our off-road website, you know, we've got 4Runner stuff on there, right? You know, we've got Colorado stuff on there, you know, we've got Land Rover Defender stuff on there, right? It's not stuff that we produce, but it gives us an eye on the market, right? It certainly lets us go, okay, you know, guys that have Broncos seem to also be buying 4Runner parts from us, right? So maybe we need to make a step for a 4Runner, you know, on the Jeep side of things, right? People have been beating down our door to get the steps that we make for Broncos adapted to the Jeep platform, and we just don't have the capacity right now. We can't keep up with the Bronco side of things, let alone bring something else in. Short answer, not right now, but is it a potential? Absolutely.
Hey man, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Pleasure meeting you guys. Pleasure chatting with you.
Sir. Of course. Thank you. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our little tour of, not even little tour, that was a big tour of the IAG facility. I don't know if you guys know, I'm Jordan at Circuit Demon. I'm normally the one that's behind the camera or editing these videos for you guys. Just want to let you know, anything that you just saw in this video of the IAG tour, you can source at circuitdemon.com. I'll put all the links in the description below. As well, right now we're running a Black Friday deal. Any of the parts that you buy on our website, IAG, Grimspeed, Perrin, literally anything on the website. Right now we're doing 20% off in-house labor. So let's say you go to our website, you buy this Perrin intake for your 2022 Subaru WRX, you bring it to us, we'll install it. Our labor price is gonna be cut 20% off for Black Friday. That is gonna be live with the dates right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put those in so you know when it starts to finish. But any of the parts sourced from our website, you can have your car brought to our shop, installed, and all the labor will be 20% off. Thank you guys for watching the IAG tour with the Circuit Demon crew. We'll see you in the next video. I can't wait to show you guys the rest of the shop renovations. This place is looking sick. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.